In the heart of Diobu, one of Port Harcourt's most bustling and humble neighborhoods, stood a small wooden shack with a faded blue tarpaulin roof. The paint on the signboard had long peeled away, but everyone knew the place simply as Mama Nkechi's spot. And everyone knew Mama Nkechi. She was a woman who turned heads without trying. Her skin gleamed like polished mahogany, and her figure, full hips that swayed gracefully as she moved, a waist that seemed sculpted by the gods themselves, made her the subject of admiration and envy in equal measure. But Mama Nkechi paid little attention to the whispers. She had jollof rice to cook. Every morning at 5 a.m., she would arrive at her shop, her wrapper tied high above her knees, ready for work. By 6 a.m., the aroma of her jollof rice would begin its slow, irresistible journey through the narrow streets of Diobu. It wasn't just the smell of tomatoes, pepper, and rice. There was something else, something people couldn't quite name but couldn't resist. "Mama Nkechi, give me one wrap," a Okada rider would shout, parking his motorcycle haphazardly. "Two wraps here," a market woman would call out, still balancing her tray of vegetables on her head. By noon, there would be a line stretching halfway down the street. Students, laborers, businessmen in slightly wrinkled shirts, and even the occasional politician's driver, they all came. Some said it was the way she fried her tomatoes until they surrendered their sweetness. Others swore it was her secret blend of spices. A few romantics claimed it was the love she stirred into every pot. But there was something else about Mama Nkechi's shop. Something strange, something unexplainable. People who ate her jollof rice felt different afterward, not just satisfied, transformed. A man who had been searching for a job for 8 months ate her rice on a Tuesday and got a call for an interview on Wednesday. A woman whose husband had been cold toward her for years bought 2 wraps to share with him. By the weekend, he had surprised her with a trip to Obudu. The stories piled up like the empty nylon bags discarded near her shop. A student who failed JAMB 3 times ate Mama Nkechi's jollof rice before his 4th attempt and scored 276. A taxi driver who had been robbed twice in 1 month started buying her rice every morning. He never got robbed again. Word spread beyond Diobu. Soon, people from GRA, Eliozu, and even as far as Aba began making pilgrimages to the small shack. They arrived in their SUVs, parking awkwardly on the rough potholed road, their gleaming shoes picking carefully through the puddles. "Mama, what do you put in this rice?" they would ask, half joking, half serious. Mama Nkechi would smile, a slow, knowing smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Now only rice, pepper, tomato, and God's blessing," she would say, stirring her pot with a long wooden spoon that had been her grandmother's. But late at night, after the last customer had left and the street fell silent except for the distant hum of generators, Mama Nkechi would sit alone in her shop. But late at night, after the last customer had left and the street fell silent except for the distant hum of generators, Mama Nkechi would sit alone in her shop. She would pull out a small worn leather pouch from beneath her wrapper, a pouch her grandmother had given her on her deathbed. Inside were 7 seeds, not for planting, not for eating, for blessing, her grandmother whispered. 1 seed, 1 pot, every day. Feed the people. Let them prosper. Mama Nkechi would drop 1 seed into her palm, whisper a prayer in a language older than Igbo, and tuck the pouch away. Tomorrow she would cook again, and the people would come. Because in Diobu, Magic didn't wear expensive robes or live in big churches. Magic wore a wrapper, stirred a pot, and smelled like the best jollof rice you'd ever tasted. The morning Mama Nkechi discovered the multiplication, she thought her eyes were deceiving her. She reached into the one leather pouch for one of the remaining 3 seeds, but when she poured the content onto her palm, her breath caught. 15 seeds. The single seed she had used yesterday had become 5 new ones. Jesus, she whispered, though she knew this had nothing to do with Jesus. For 3 days, she told no one. Each morning, 1 seed became 5. By Saturday, she had 42 seeds. The temptation grew stronger. What if I used 2 seeds instead of 1? 3. The blessings would be stronger. I could help more people. On Monday morning, she dropped 3 seeds into her pot. The change was immediate. The jollof rice that day was extraordinary. The aroma alone made people weep. A young man named Emeka ate 2 wraps before his interview and got hired on the spot with double the salary he'd asked for. A barren woman ate 1 wrap and felt a flutter in her belly that very night. But by evening, strange reports began filtering back. Emeka's former co-worker, who had recommended him for the job, was suddenly fired for no reason. The barren woman's sister, who had 3 children, lost her pregnancy the same night. A trader who bought rice for good luck made his biggest sale ever, while his competitor's shop mysteriously burned down. The blessings weren't appearing from nowhere. They were being transferred. One person's miracle was another person's tragedy. Mama Nkechi noticed something else. Each time she used multiple seeds, she felt stronger, more vibrant. Her skin glowed brighter, her curves became fuller. Men who had never looked twice now stumbled over their words. But her neighbor, Auntie Ego, who had always been plump and cheerful, suddenly looked gaunt and tired. The seeds weren't creating blessings. They were redistributing fortune like a cosmic bank transfer, taking from many to give to few. And Mama Nkechi, as they cook, was taking the largest cut. Pastor Jeremiah was first to connect the dots. He stood in the market square, his voice booming. Why is it that ever since that woman's rice became popular, businesses are closing, marriages are breaking, children are falling sick? She's not blessing people, she's moving blessings around, stealing from Peter to pay Paul. Some dismissed him as jealous, but others began to notice the pattern. The landlord who ate her rice every day and suddenly inherited his brother's property. His brother had died unexpectedly. The student who passed his exam after buying her rice. His classmate who had studied harder failed mysteriously. The politician who won his election, his opponent's campaign boss had crashed. Word spread. Some customers stopped coming, frightened, but others came in greater numbers, desperate, greedy, willing to risk someone else's misfortune for their own gain. Mama Nkechi tried using just 1 seed again, but it was too late. The seeds now multiplied whether she wanted them to or not. They filled her pouch, her pots, her room, and with each seed that multiplied, she could feel herself growing more beautiful, more magnetic, while the neighborhood around her seemed to dim. Auntie Ego could barely walk now. The Okada rider who used to buy rice daily had an accident. Even the street children looked thinner. She was draining Diobo. Then Chidera came. The 17-year-old didn't join the line. She walked straight to the window and said loudly, "Your grandmother made a mistake." The queue fell silent. She thought the seeds gave blessings, but they don't create anything. They only move things around, from the many to the few, from the weak to the strong. From them, she pointed at the crowd, to you. Mama Nkechi's hands trembled. Every person who eats your rice gets their blessing stolen from someone nearby. And you take from everyone. Look at yourself. Look at them. Mama Nkechi finally really looked at her regular customers. They were thinner, duller, slower than months ago. The whole neighborhood had a grey pallor to it. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Your grandmother's other granddaughter. She gave me the second pouch before she died. I stopped cooking when I realized what it cost." Chidera's eyes held pity. "The seeds multiply because they are hungry. They want to be used. And the more you use them, the more they take, until there's nothing left to take." She turned to leave, then paused. "Stop now and maybe people can recover. Keep going and you will be the most beautiful woman in a graveyard." That night, Mama Nkechi sat staring at the multiplying seeds. Outside, desperate customers lined up, willing to unknowingly rob their neighbors for a taste of fortune. She looked in her cracked mirror. She was stunning and surrounded by suffering she had caused. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "Feed the people, let them prosper." But prosperity stolen from others wasn't prosperity at all. It was a curse wearing a beautiful face.